On Christmas Eve, the man I thought of as a brother looked me dead in the eye and said the 6 words that detonated my entire life. I'm in love with your husband. It's strange what your brain does in a moment like that. The world outside keeps moving. The Christmas lights on our perfect tree kept twinkling, but suddenly they felt blinding. The smell of pine and cinnamon that had been so comforting just moments before was now thick and suffocating. Everything was supposed to be perfect. This home, our marriage, our friendship, it was all supposed to be perfect. But with that one sentence, the beautiful snow globe of our life was picked up and shaken so violently that I knew none of the pieces would ever land the same way again. My mind was just scrambling, trying to find a place to file this information, but there was no folder for it. It was an error message, a system crash. To truly understand how our picture-perfect Christmas Eve became ground zero for a catastrophe, you have to understand how the 3 of us began. My husband, James, and I had been married for 5 years. 5 years of what I thought was a comfortable, unbreakable love. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was real and it was ours. We had built a home filled with laughter, stupid arguments about who left the cabinet doors open, and a deep, settled love that felt like coming home. This Christmas was meant to be a celebration of all of that, and at the center of our life, right alongside us, was Liam. Liam wasn't just James's best friend. He was our best friend. He was a fixture in James's life since they were teenagers. When I came into the picture, Liam just folded me into their world, and we became a seamless trio. He wasn't a third wheel. He was the third leg of the tripod we built our life on. He gave a speech at our wedding that was so funny and so heartfelt it left the whole room in tears. He was the first person we called when we brought home our dog. He was family, the cool, funny uncle to our golden retriever, a constant. I never, not for one single second, thought that foundation was about to crumble. The shift started subtly, maybe a month before Christmas. So quietly I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. There was a new intensity in Liam's eyes when he looked at James. I'd catch it in fleeting moments, a gaze that lingered a second too long, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I remember one Saturday, we were all decorating the tree. James was on a ladder, trying to get the star just right. I turned from handing him an ornament and saw Liam, who was supposed to be untangling lights. But he was just standing there, watching James with an expression of pure adoration, laced with something that looked like pain. When he caught me looking, a flush crept up his neck and he fumbled with the lights. "This is a mess," he mumbled. A sharp little spike of unease went through me, but I shoved it down. "You're being ridiculous," I told myself. "He's just sad about his breakup. He loves James like a brother." But the moments kept piling up like paper cuts. He started anticipating James's needs in a way that felt almost proprietary, bringing him his favorite complicated coffee order unasked. Their inside jokes started to feel less like shared history and more like a private language I wasn't fluent in. During a movie night, he rested his hand on James's shoulder, and it just stayed there. I sat on the other side of my own husband, feeling a cold, invisible chasm opening up between us. I was starting to feel like a guest in my own marriage, and the anxiety was a constant, low hum beneath my skin. I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure husband, so I said nothing. I just smiled through the growing tension that only I seemed to feel. Christmas Eve arrived, and I felt like I was wearing a costume of holiday cheer. Our house was warm and smelled of roasted food, but a knot of dread had been tightening in my stomach all day. James was blissfully unaware, humming carols and being the perfect host. Liam, however, was a ghost at the party, his smiles strained and brief. Later, he cornered me in the kitchen as I was looking for another bottle of wine. "Mark, can we talk for a second?" His voice was so strained, the party noise from the other room faded to a dull roar. "Of course," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Is everything okay?" He stared at the countertop, his knuckles white where he gripped the edge. "No, nothing is okay," he whispered. He took a shaky breath, and when he finally looked at me, his eyes were wet. "I can't do this anymore, Mark. I can't sit here in your house and pretend." Every alarm bell I had been systematically silencing for weeks started screaming at once. "Pretend what, Liam?" And then he said it. The words that split my life into a before and an after. "I'm in love with James," he confessed. The words a torrent of pain and desperation. "I think I have been for years. I tried to push it down, but seeing you two so happy, it's killing me. I'm so sorry, Mark. I am so sorry." The words didn't just hang in the air. They sucked all the oxygen out of the room. From the living room, I could hear Silent Night begin to play, a cruel, ironic soundtrack to my world cracking down the middle. I just stood there, unable to speak, as Liam turned and walked out the back door into the cold, leaving me alone in the wreckage. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen. I just know I had to eventually walk back into that living room, smile, and wish our friends a Merry Christmas as they left, all while feeling like my insides had been clawed out. When the last guest was gone, James turned to me, his face glowing. "That was great, wasn't it? Best Christmas Eve ever." My composure shattered. "Liam loves you," I choked out, the words tasting like acid. James's smile fell. He looked utterly confused. "What are you talking about?" "Of course he does, Mark. He's my best friend." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "He's in love with you. He just told me." The genuine shock on his face was almost worse than if he had known. It confirmed it. I was the only one who saw it. I was the fool. The fight that followed was the worst of our lives. It wasn't about cheating. Not really. It was about a deeper betrayal. "How could you be so blind?" I screamed. "Or were you? Did it feel good, having both of us worship you?" The questions were poison, but I couldn't stop them. The shame was suffocating. We spent Christmas Eve in separate rooms. Christmas morning was silent. The beautifully wrapped gifts under the tree looked like artifacts from a life that no longer existed. The silence in our house was deafening for days, but underneath the anger and the wreckage, my love for James was still there, a stubborn, flickering flame. I knew I had a choice. Let this poison everything, or fight for us. So we started talking. Not just talking, but excavating. The conversations were raw, ugly, and painful. I had to voice my deepest insecurities, the fear that I wasn't enough. And James had to listen. He knew trust couldn't be demanded, only earned. He chose radical transparency. He held nothing back, creating a space for my anger and my fear. And he just kept showing up, proving his loyalty with actions, not just words. He made the call to Liam. He told him they needed space, indefinite space. He made it clear that his heart and his loyalty were with me. It was a brutal, painful end to a lifelong friendship. But it was the choice he had to make. Slowly, painstakingly, we began to heal. Rebuilding trust isn't a single action. It's a daily choice. We were forced to learn a new level of honesty, facing vulnerabilities we had always ignored. Our marriage survived, but that glossy, naive version of it is gone forever. In its place is something tested, something real. That Christmas didn't just break our perfect life. It forced us to tear it all down and build a new one, strong enough to actually withstand a storm. It was the Christmas that shattered our perfect life, but in doing so, it let us build a real one. It taught me that love isn't about avoiding the hard times. It's about choosing each other, even when you're terrified. So I have to ask, what would you have done in my shoes? Do you think a friendship like that can, or should, survive a confession like that? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever had your world turned upside down, I'd love to hear your story. And if you'd like more, I've shared other long-form audio stories in my Ko-fi library. Each one carries its own secrets and choices. Maybe one of them will stay with you long after the last line.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child. Holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night.